Welcome. Really glad you can join today as we are going to be talking about leadership imperative, future-proofing talent, all sorts of good stuff. That is Dan and Glyn's conversation that is going to be happening. My name is Leah Parkhill Riley, and I am a coach and the practice leader for coaching here at the Roundtable. So really excited to listen in on this conversation. Before we dive in, just want to take a moment to share something that is close to our hearts here at the Roundtable. At the Roundtable, we're committed to making an impact as part of our ongoing commitment to reconciliation. We've partnered with Inspired. I may have jumped a slide, Glyn, about just all of the, okay, just we're partnered with Inspire. It's an Indigenous charity that invests in the education of Indigenous youth to honor the legacy of the 215 children whose unmarked graves are found in Kamloops. We've set a goal of 215 university scholarships over the next 5 years. And so if you'd like to join us on our efforts, you can please reach out, and you will be putting the information on this screen. There it is. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm joining today from Toronto, Ontario, which is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, part of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat peoples. I encourage you to consider the lands that you're on today. Okay, so just a quick note on how you can participate today. So we do have all lines muted, but as you've already seen, the chat is open, and see Dan saying hello to everyone there. So we would really love to hear your questions, and we do try to make this interactive as possible. So ask those questions. All right, so if you're unfamiliar with us at the Roundtable, we are all about collective impact, about really optimizing the passion and potential of leaders, teams, and cultures. Continuing on, here's how we actually do it. We do it through a variety of approaches: group coaching, team coaching, and one-on-one. We really help lean into building mindsets and behaviors that matter the most. Continuing on, official welcome to our two shining faces on the screen. So leading the discussion today is our founder and president, Glyn Roberts McCabe. That is Glyn like shine. Glyn is a certified executive coach with over 30 years of experience building teams with a specialized focus on accelerating the development of high potential leaders. And joining Glyn is Dan Pontefract, who is the author of 6 award-winning books on leadership, purpose, and culture. And Glyn is pointing to the bookshelf behind her. You can see a number of titles that include the one that we're going to be talking about today, The Future of Work is Gray. There's also Work Life Bloom, which was a Thinker's 50 Best Management Book 2024. There was Open to Think, a Get Abstract Book of the Year. I won't go through the whole list, but there's 6. Dan leads the Pontefract Group, which helps organizations close the gap between what they say and how they lead, and then build systems to keep the gap closed. And with that, I will hand things over to Glyn.
Thanks, Leah. Hopefully we're not echoing, because I feel like my voice on its own is more than enough. Like, you believe me twice. Okay, so I think this is the 3rd time we've been together, maybe 3rd time talking about your books.
Yep.
So I don't know how you do it, because I've written 2, and the process to me is so painful to talk. So talk to us about why you wanted to write this book right now.
Well, I want to stay married to Denise, Glyn. If I am out of Denise's hair writing books, then we stay married. So that's it's a self-preservation mode. But well, personally, a couple reasons. One, I'm an idiot. Like, I have been in sort of the HR, people and culture space for all my career. And although I've been on my own as a solopreneur since 2018, the time between essentially my time at SAP and TELUS, which was just under 20 years, here I am leading leadership development, culture, L&D, collaboration, all the good stuff that you and I love. I never once thought about age. Like, just naive idiot. Here I am, middle age, I would say, and just never crossed my mind. Like, how much of an idiot am I? So I'm kind of making up for lost time being an idiot. The second was something that happened to me whilst I was writing Work Life Bloom.
Mm.
So I've just sort of entered my 50s. I just turned 51, and I got a form email from one of the speaker bureaus that I just happened to be with. And the letter was, thanks for your service. We're refreshing the roster, was the language.
Mm.
And I was like, huh. So I just got fired from a speakers bureau. And so I had to dig into it a little bit. And so I dug, because who gets rid of people in a form letter, first of all, on
Yeah.
an email? That's just bad form, bad class.
Mm.
And so then I followed up, and it was, yeah, a lot of people like you. So you dig a little more, and it was, okay, so middle age approaching older age speaker, like, you don't want us? Okay. So it stung, but it stung because then I started to reflect on my time as a leader and an executive in these roles that should have been thinking about it.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, I got to finish this book. And then I am going to dig deep into this whole thing about age and where were my blind spots. And then once I started to peel the proverbial onion back line, OMG, I was like, okay, now I need to really, if I were still a chief envisioner, chief learning officer, head, someone in people and culture, what would I be doing right now? And then that's where the research began.
Yeah, I remember when you were just you were kind of early stage of the journey, and you and I were having a coffee on, off Oak Bay, and
Yeah.
you were telling me about it. And I don't think you're an idiot. I think when you're young, you're just in a bubble, right? And you and I think especially when I know my experience was I was always the youngest person on executive teams.
Yeah.
I was used to being young. And every once in a while I have to remind myself that I'm not young anymore, I'm old. Like I'm now that person. Like, what? What happened? So all of you young people on the call right now, it's coming for you. It's coming for you. But what I think the thing that really, as you were kind of sharing with me, and you sort of talked about the light bulb shape of the population, was this whole piece around this age debt and what we're coming into. So for those who have not had a chance to read the book yet, don't know much about it, talk to us about it, because you talk about age debt like climate change, right? Like the climate crisis. So set the case for what we're staring down the barrel of right now.
So I like visuals.
Mm.
Here's how I would shape it for people that are trying to figure out, well, what is this age debt that Dan and Glenn are talking about?
Mm.
So what I looked at was, okay, so I didn't call it age debt at first. I was like, oh, there's problems. Like,
Yeah.
and the first one that I really focused on was ageism, because I thought that with the Speaker Bureau, it was an ageist act.
Yeah.
And then I started to sort of pick and prod at the ageism piece. I was like, oh, actually, there was a time when I was 25 when I had just moved from being a high school teacher into being in higher ed at an institution in BC called BCIT. So I go to my first faculty meeting, and as I walked into the sprawling Burnaby Willingdon campus of BCIT, I go into the loo, and that time there were sort of faculty and staff loos or bathrooms, and there were bathrooms for students. So I go in the faculty and staff one, and as I enter it, there's this older gentleman, and he looks at me and says, "Son," you know where this is going right away. "Son, this bathroom is for faculty and staff." And I held up my lanyard. I'm like, "Hey, I work here." And this gentleman says, "Well, that's a shame. I can't believe we're hiring people so young."
Oh.
So that's 25, 26 years earlier for me. So I've got these two examples that just really still harbor pain.
Yeah.
And then I started digging into ageism, all ages. So young, middle age, old. And it is the last ism that we really need to solve for. So then I was like, whoa, what about demography? We all age. So is there something going on with demographic change. And I sort of cheekily call it here the demographic apocalypse, partially because our heads are in the sand, or as I overlook Niagara Falls right now, our heads seem to be plunging over the falls. We are not paying attention to the fact that we are living longer, which is hooray. But where the sort of population crisis, if you will, is without immigration, you know, Canada, the US, the Western world, the G20, like right around the world, we're getting older by average.
Yeah.
And so if we live longer and there's less young people, clearly the demographic change is going to impact the workforce, but we're not really paying attention or discussing it. So that was number two. Number three is we have this tendency, Glenn, which I know you and I have chatted about over sticky toffee puddings, is when we start looking at our organizations and we want to save a fast buck, we fire the older people.
Yeah, we do.
And then what happens is we lose a lot of wisdom and tacit knowledge and intelligence, and it leaves. And then we wonder how we used to do things process wise. So again, knowledge being the third one. And then the last one, which really perhaps the most frightening, is we're living longer again. Yay. But when I started to dig into, are we prepared as human beings to live longer? And is the organization helping or not? We're not saving enough to live a 100-year life. And so if you're in your 50s today, just by example, in Canada, the median savings, so people who don't know the median, that means the halfway point. The median savings of a Canadian who's in their early 50s, so 50 to 54, is $71,000.
Wow.
So that means half of Canadians aged between 50 and 54 do not have $70,000 saved for a retirement, which they'll probably, you know, live until their 80s now. So what's going to happen? Well, you know, OAS, CPP, et cetera, they're not, it's going to help, but you're going to see people who are going to need to work. That's my point.
Yeah.
And this whole longevity piece, I think, is something we need to solve for in our orgs, because if you're today born in 2005, 2010, you're going to live to 100. And that is going to reshape how the workforce strategy is going to have to be affected.
It's so, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking those of us who are Gen X who grew up with those Freedom 55 commercials, right?
Yeah, exactly. I grew up with it too. I grew up in Hamilton and on the
Freedom 75, Freedom 85, I don't know.
It is so amazing where you're right. So I kind of make fun of that in the book as well. Being a 1971 born baby, listening to Chum Radio or CFNY, you would hear these all the time. The Freedom 55 commercials on the radio. You're like, yeah, that's it. Now, in literally 36 days, I turned 55. Yeah. And I feel like I'm not even at my prime.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm never going to retire, but I certainly.
There's such a strong narrative, though, about retirement, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like most people that I talk to are gunning towards a number, 55, 60, 65, whatever it is, right? And I think maybe, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, like, I don't really think about that. Like, I sort of think more about like, as long as I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And yet we're so conditioned, like we've been conditioned, right, to sort of think of work in that way.
Well, it's like this. You go up, and then there's a cliff and you're supposed to like immediately stop. Yeah. It makes no sense. And like, again, when I start doing the research and wondering, how do you connect these dots, all these HDET principles, Canada is going to need the plus 55 crew to help with the economy, with the workplace, et cetera. But they too need a sense of purpose, sense of meaning, a sense of belonging. You know, mental faculties continue to increase if you are doing something of merit. And we know now cognitive decline and decay is onset earlier when you're not doing anything and just gardening or golfing. Like, there's lots to be said for you to be employed, whether it's part-time, full-time, whatever the number is. I think that's important for this conversation.
100% agree. And so you talk in the book about this idea of the experience dividend. So if we've got the age debt, we've got the experience dividend. Talk to us a little bit about how we can be thinking about this.
So if age debt right now, in my opinion, is overbearing, the weight, as you can see kind of on my seesaw here, the organization is unbeknownst succumbed to age debt because of those factors we talked about. They're just not really paying attention.
Mhm.
And so experience dividend is the antidote. And first of all, this is not really a self-help book. Like, I am not writing, this book's not about living to be 100 and what you should do.
Yeah.
Now, you can look in the mirror for some of these experience dividend examples and say, oh, this is kind of cool. But I've written a book line that is for leaders, organizations, teams to consider so they can make a difference going forward. So these are the three components.
Mhm.
So the experience dividend, to flip the scale, so to say, is the career canvas, the wisdom wheel, and the longevity lens. So I got some graphics there that usually help. So let's start with the longevity lens. So the longevity lens basically is saying there are certain components where you as an individual leader, but you as the organizational culture have to be thinking about. Because if we're living longer, maybe we should be having conversations and changing our practices that revolve around living longer. So age-ready culture, what does that mean? That means is your language in job descriptions, in the way in which you have town halls, in the way in which that you showcase some of your memorabilia, whatever it is, like communications with the public, whatever to me, it doesn't matter what it is. Are you age inclusive for young, middle age, and older workers? What I call, we'll get to that later probably. Well-being awareness. So here's another example. So she's allowed me to talk about this. She's in the book, and that's my wife, Denise, who I was kidding about earlier with. And I'm going to use this word specifically, has suffered from both premenopause and menopause. And if we are blind, whether you're a male or female leader, it doesn't matter, blind to the fact that 54% of women suffer from 1, 2, 3, up to 3 different types of menopause, pre, peri, or meno. Why are we like, this is the thing we need to be accommodating for. So this idea of longevity, that people don't retire at 50 or 55, that they may be suffering from perimenopause, and that there may be some sort of accommodation that's required. That's experience dividend thinking, right? So, there's some other bits there. So that's just, hey, organization and leader, what are you doing to think about longevity in a different way?
Can you guys, just to be really tactical for people on the call, can you give me an example of like language that's age ready, like, or that you would see as not being inclusive of all things? Like, what do you see people
So think about a job description. So a job description could be geared toward exuberant, energetic, fresh. And that sort of language like that all of a sudden says, well, I'm 55. What if my energy isn't that fresh? What if I'm not that whippersnapper?
Right.
Yet, what if that is tailored in a way that then precludes the individual from applying, yet that experience is exactly what the organization need? And maybe it's not full-time. Maybe they could do that work in 60%, 3 days a week. And the organization was like, oh, I didn't know that Dan could work for just 3 days, but do the same work over 5. And we just precluded Dan from applying because Dan thought that role was geared towards a younger individual.
Yeah.
Conversely, though, right? It's like must have 20 years experience,
right,
in whatever it is.
And again, you're repeated 20 times.
Yeah, exactly. So those are like just language things you got to be thinking, just job descriptions, right? Whatever. You can start there, and I think you have a good start. Yeah.
No, I love that. I think, I mean, and I'd love to kind of maybe frame this up for people because, hey, I love a good stereotype. Like, I embrace being Gen X. Call me the bitter generation. I friggin' love it. And I'll tell you why we're bitter, you boomers. Like, I'm all over it. But you actually came at this a little bit differently in the book, which I think is really helpful. So talk to us about how you reframed
all right.
generations.
So I love you, but what I don't want is to bring generations into the workforce, because I think what those tropes and stereotypes and memes actually have an underlying negative consequence, which we again don't talk about. Like, again, I'm sort of disappointed there's no more Nirvana. But I'm not going to show up in grunge outfits and sort of, where the hell is my mosh pit?
Yeah.
And so we have to be cognizant of the fact that instead of generations, this is what I like to do. I like to believe that we are Taylor Swift and we'll have our own Eras tour, and we all have our own Eras tour. And in fact, there's only 3 stops in our Eras tour, but we all go through it. And so as you can see here, as you age and as wisdom rises, so age can be career as well, really, right? So over time on the x-axis, I mean, death and taxes, right? We all age. And on the top, the y-axis on the left there, you can see wisdom. So as you age, you go through what I call the career eras. So rivers, rocks, and rubies. Your rivers era, regardless of when you think that is. So you start work at 18, 16, 24, it doesn't matter. And again, it's called fluid intelligence. This is where you make mistakes. It's totally cool. You got good ideas. You're learning the ropes. Like, Kenzie, I don't know your age, but you're probably in your river to rock era, right? An individual who's just getting going, and it's just awesome. The rivers era continues throughout your life, but now you're solid in your second era, the rocks era. So you're still your own river, still got lots of ideas, but now you've entered an era. Maybe you're 30, maybe you're 35. Doesn't mean if you're leader or not. Doesn't matter. You're now able to see around corners. You're able to sort of get that. Yeah, I remember doing that before. This is how it didn't work. You're really now stoic, right? So okay, so now you got your river flowing, you've got these rocks in your own river, and then over time, as age increases, that stone, that rock, it crystallizes into a ruby. And again, you still have that river, you still have your rock, but then now you're full of more crystallized gems. And this is where wisdom really is incurring at a rate in which that you cannot define when you're at a river level because you just haven't seen it all. And so your rear view mirror is wide and long, whereas you're still looking ahead, just like rocks and rivers are, but they don't have the same breadth and depth of the rear view mirror. And you come to those meetings with the ideas, sure, but you also have the gratitude from coming into these situations where things might have fallen apart or done very well. Or that client that loves chocolate covered strawberries on Valentine's Day because that's just their thing and they miss their mom who's no longer with them. And that's what she used to do for them. Well, if that's wisdom, and that's potentially something that a Ruby can share to rocks and rivers on their team, just as a weird example. So I think that this happens whether you're born in 1971 or 2011, you're going to go through 3 eras.
And what's the era that you think most organizations are focusing on?
Well, it sort of depends on the industry, right? So, for example, mining paid no attention to rivers. And they're stuck with a whole bunch of rocks and rubies. I mean, pun intended, I suppose. And they're now trying to catch up because they never targeted rivers to replace the rocks and the rubies who moved up the chain. And so today in Canada, I think there's a void of about 71,000 miners.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, why didn't we pay attention to rivers? Well, because they just paid all the attention to the rubies and the rocks. If you're in San Francisco, San Jose, in the Valley these days, all the attention is paid to the rivers, and they're, nuking, terminating voluntarily, and mostly involuntarily, older workers. And there's been 140,000 people terminated since January. Yes, they might have overhired, but the mass numbers that they have overhired was at the river and rock level, and the mass number of people who are being terminated are at the rock and ruby level. So it really does depend on industry, and it does depend on certainly culture, I would say, Glyne, as to how we deal with these river rocks or ruby scenarios.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on is so interesting, and then if I think about structure and processes within, right, to help people move through their careers and all that it's so archaic. The performance review systems. So many companies don't even have any sort of form of career discussion conversations. It's like some kind of performance review thing. And then I think the way we think about it, we have this very sort of, you're going to have this career, and to your point, then you're going to go off you're going to retire and you're going to go, right? Like you've got your end game, and then see you later. And that's the option. We don't think about other options, but you've kind of proposed sort of a new model, new way to think about careers, your career canvas.
This I just happened to
Yes,
sort of yeah.
okay, I'm loving this background thing. Everybody, I want you to know this has not been rehearsed. This is
No, no,
all
no,
Dan.
no.
This is what you get when you bring Dan into the organization to talk to you. Unbelievable. Keep this slide up. Okay, talk to us about the career canvas though, because I love this.
Well, I'm still a recovering educator. So, if I'm in the audience, I want to be semi-entertained, but also visuals help me.
I thought you might switch your hats.
I could do that too. Yeah, I could do that. Okay, so you're spot on, Glenn. Like careers, is it all meant to go up? And my experience, is it all meant to be from the job families that we and PNC and HR have dominated the conversation for 50 years, thanks to Hay Group and others that came up with the fact that we have promotions and it's only up. So again, mea culpa, first of all. I mean, I bought into this system for years and years and years. I thought that the only way to grow was up. And if you're an individual contributor, well, you know what? You might get your 0.5% increase in pay. That's you. Fine. You're not a leader.
Yeah.
So what I had to do was like throw out the whole thing. So not just career ladder, but developmental ladders.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I devise, essentially what you see here, kind of on the left of the screen, is what I call, instead of the ladder, which I want to set torch to, is a canvas.
Mm-hmm.
So I started from the premise metaphorically that each of us are artists.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're artists, we have, and like any artist, have the opportunity then to paint in all the colors of a palette and all the brushes. And so if you kind of take the metaphor, then you're like, okay, well, depending on if I'm a river, rock, or ruby, could I insert myself or remove myself or push myself in different ways? And the answer should be yes. Because again, if we go back to age debt, what's one of the issues? Demographic apocalypse. So we're going to run out of young people and we're living longer from a longevity perspective. So maybe we should be rethinking the career ladder as much as the developmental ladder. So hear me out. In the middle there, obviously, there are some roles where you should stay put. You're really happy and do that for 5 weeks, 5 years, 50 years, whatever. Like bus drivers are bus drivers sometimes. It's good. They love it. That's great. Okay, stay put and then retire. Mm-hmm. But if you're not in one of those roles and you think that, or your organization thinks that you should, kind of quote, mix it up, then you see these other 8 opportunities. So let's say Spark Up, top right, the pink. What if, you had these opportunities whereby you call it a tiger team, maybe special ops, special projects, where rivers, rocks, and rubies could get together, work together collaboratively, and they could conquer something that organization needed done. Maybe it's full-time, maybe it's part-time, maybe it's a gig inside the organization, but you're just consciously saying, who could do this? How could you get that experience transferred? How do you have reverse mentoring occurring in that spark up opportunity? And do they allow themselves to go back to the job when it's done, whatever their job was before? Maybe. Could they go full time into the role that whatever they created? Sure, why not? That's creativity. Mm-hmm. A slowdown. So bottom right there. So we this drives me crazy, Glenn. You got me on a rant here, but but we it feels so the psychology that we put on people who would like to do less because something happened in their life. So maybe they lost a parent, lost a kid. Maybe it's menopause. Maybe they just want like a 2-year break because they're burnt out. Yeah. Why do we shame people with a scarlet letter who put up their hand and say, do you mind if I'm not director anymore? Could I be an individual contributor or a manager?
Yeah.
We have to get past that. So I'll give you a concrete example of that. And it's just brilliant. It's BMW. So for this book, I spent a lot of time in Japan, in South Korea, in Germany, in France, and Italy, parts of Canada and the US, a little bit UK. I think most impressed by this example, it's like a slowdown opportunity. So BMW introduced something called the Senior Expert Program, 2022. And the Senior Expert Program is their kind of way of saying, well, here's a slowdown opportunity. So people can voluntarily, so it's not involuntary, don't make people do this. So if you're in a leadership role of any stripe,
Mhm.
and you're going into your 50s, in your 60s, like you're over 50 basically.
Mhm.
You have a chance to put up your hand and say, I would like to step down from my senior role, whatever it is, director, manager, VP. And I would like to become an individual contributor now. And you become the mentor to the person that is in the succession plan as well.
Mm.
And they keep you at BMW. Uh, and it's not a phased out retirement of any sort. It is just you now switching roles from whatever that title was to something that's an individual contributor. They know you have tacit knowledge. They know you have experience that you can share. It's this kind of wisdom wheel in effect, and there's no stigma. It's like you've now moved from Skywalker to Yoda or whatever you want to like. It's like now you are Gandalf.
Mhm.
And people are like, oh, right. Oh, yeah, there's Dan walking around with the white beard doing this, but contributing still in different ways. So
Mhm.
that's slow down.
Mhm.
Now, phased out, one last one I'll dig into because maybe there's some good examples people can chime in on the chat on. So I never thought about this, certainly when I was in PNC, but the phased out is, again, for people who do want to retire, there's nothing wrong with retirement.
Yeah.
So those that may want to, but do you just have to fall off the cliff, Glenn, and sort of like one day you go from 100% to zero?
Yeah.
Or two examples, one at L'Oreal and another at BCLC, which is the British Columbia Lottery Corp. So they give them up to 5 year runways to sort of slowly, by percentage, ease on the brakes, I suppose, of your full time role. So you can go from 100 to 80 to 60 to 50, even down to 20% one day a week, and then you fully retire.
Mhm.
And again, if we are thinking about careers as ways in which, oh my gosh, Dan wants to hang out with us for 5 years, but on a degraded scale, and we still get to have Dan around, but he can help share in the wisdom transfer, etc. Oh my gosh, when we start thinking like that, and it's not just out the door after you turn whatever age and you think you want to retire at 60, 65, 70, that is extraordinary type of thinking.
Yeah, and I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, and I know in the book you sort of point this out though. There's not that many organizations that are doing these kinds of things. And so as you were kind of going around, you're doing the research, you're talking to people, what are the kind of the barriers and the beliefs that we have that hold us back from trying some of these things, like the sort of phased out approach, the runway, the part-time work, go become a mentor to another group and, step back into an individual contributor role. What are the things that you kind of ran up against, and your observation of why we don't do it?
There's a few. I mean, the first is we've always done it this way, so why change? Right? So the HR, PNC leadership practices that are semi-dilapidated, if not antiquated and archaic, still remain because it's easier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Number two, I would say this is not on the radar of PNC leaders to the degree it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then consequently, then for an ergo, it's not on the C-suite's radar. Yet, ironically, this should be starting if you're public traded or not, public sector or not. This should start in the boardroom. Like there is an inevitability of this demographic change in Canada. It's happening. Canada's birth rate is at 1.26.
Yeah, that's right. We're not even replacing ourselves.
And even with immigration, whom when we do bring in immigrants, and we know we've capped that recently with federal government changes, it's still not doing the replacement.
Right.
So we must come to grips here in Canada with the fact that our workforce demographics are changing. And at a board level, if we did a semi-good job, and we're certainly not done, at the 30% objective of women in board roles and in senior leadership roles, we need to be putting age in a very similar file and saying, well, what's our organization doing from an age inclusivity, which includes some of the age debt practices I talked about to sort of move forward to an experience dividend rethinking. Because I'll tell you, Glenn, and I think you know this, we talked about talent wars, in the 2000s.
Oh yeah.
This is going to be a bloodbath if you're not prepared as an organization.
And as I have so many thoughts zipping through my head, and one of them, well, like there's a couple of dots that I'm in my mind going, because I now going into the stage of, okay, so here I am, I'm a Ruby, I'm ready to kind of, maybe I want to slow it down a bit. I'm looking for that. But financially, $70,000 average savings in my account,
Yeah.
I actually can't afford to do that, right? And it makes me just think about some of the systemic structures that need to be in place in organizations, because I was curious when you were talking about the BMW. It's like, okay, so then are people taking pay cuts to do that? Like if you're going down a level, are you taking a pay cut with that? Because we've bundled compensation so closely into this climbing of the ladder that I wonder, like how are we going to, try new things and extract that model? And then we've got individuals who really are struggling.
So that's where this longevity lens comes in. So if you see one of the things they're called financial clarity.
Mhm.
So again, I think there's a quid pro quo, if there's some sort of reciprocity requirement here where organizations are teaching rivers and rocks. I think Ruby's, the train has left the current Rubies, I would say. But for the rivers and rocks, we have, as leaders, a fiduciary responsibility as a Ruby to teach rivers and rocks of today that they're going to live to their 90s or 100s and that they're going to have to plan differently financially. And as we know, the cost of living has gone
Yeah.
bonkers crazy around here. So I think there's that responsibility, but also it's our responsibility to wake up the rivers and rocks so that they take responsibility. And that may mean sacrifices in different ways in which to work and different ways in which to think. But again, we have taught everyone that the talent model, the compensation model, the HR model is you go up. And if we don't have the fiduciary responsibility to help our team members with what their awareness is for longevity, we also have a responsibility to be doing things like this and to be saying, look, we will help you as well in different ways. And that might mean something what Unilever does. Unilever introduced something called UWork. And it's a great example. So Unilever, everyone knows, big company, and they've got all kinds of sublines and products underneath it. So at HQ, they introduced something called UWork. What is it? It basically allows a team member at Unilever to have a side hustle.
Mm.
Now, do I like the world in which that we live where we sort of have to have side hustles in certain cases for certain people? No. But I also believe in UBI. And so I think we need that. But that being said, Unilever, big company, publicly traded, said, we would love, if you like, we'll work with you to find sort of your 20% time so you can have a side hustle. As long as it's not in competition to Unilever and service lines, we want you, we allow you, we encourage you to kind of think about what else you might want to do on the side to help you with your financial clarity, if you will. So that to me is like leadership in a different way than the classic climb the ladder compensatory model.
I mean, that is interesting. Again, brain's going, and that opens up an interesting can of worms, to be candid. And then you say the word fiduciary responsibility for rivers and rocks, and I think, and fiduciary responsibility for some of those rubies in the ivory tower that are paying themselves 300 times the salary of the average frontline worker.
Yes.
How about we disperse some income back down the ladder? Right? Like, so that's me getting on my soapbox around that kind of thing, right? Like, I think there's also some broken systems in some of, especially these publicly traded organizations, right? Where we've created, frankly, an elite class and then the workers, right? So I think those that are on this call that are in those senior, like, it's tough, man. Like, it's tough. I get it. You've done the grind, you've gone, and now you're getting the payout. But we got to start thinking differently about some of this. I think the redistribution of wealth that comes within companies also has to be looked at to support some of these things, which are completely critical right now. Okay, so I won't make you drive down that train, but I want to talk a little bit about with AI and our little members that are coming in. This I feel like I can't talk about anything today without bringing up AI.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you're seeing this is going to be reshaping entry-level work. What are organizations going to have to think about? Because We in our recent research report, it was very interesting. The Gen X leaders in our community are fully embracing AI technology, right? They're grasping it, they're leveraging it. And the younger leaders were much more skeptical about it and much more worried about it. And so we're seeing this sort of division in terms of, not, I mean, and I look at my daughter who's I'm using Gen language, but Gen Z, and, has a lot of negativity around AI, not for the reasons people think, more for the environmental reasons and the impacts, right, that are going on there. So as you're thinking about this and talking about this, what do you think that organizations need to do to get kind of the younger people the experiences they need so that they can ultimately become rocks?
Yeah,
How do they
exactly.
develop that? How do they solidify their knowledge?
Well, just one step back for a second. 10 years ago, this isn't a book plug, but 10 years ago, I wrote The Purpose Effect. And there I described a place in which there's three types of purpose: personal, role, and org. And the organizational purpose is that if you go to work, you want to believe that your company or your organization, if you're public sector or not for profit, stands for something more than just power and profit.
Yeah.
And so if I fast forward 10 years, I could replace power and profit with AI.
Hmm.
And so when I'm speaking with my Gen Z kids, I agree there's this partial reticence, first for sustainability environmental factors. So whether that is the gobbling up of energy and water to power up the data centers, whether that is the ethics that go around with the use of AI, i.e., the scraping that occurred, and people like me and you who are authors not getting compensated for the scrape. The use of AI to ostensibly replace whether you are a River Rock or Ruby, the competence. All of that is now, I think, eyes wide open. Decision makers have to be thinking about, what do we stand for? Like, what's our purpose? What is it that we stand for here? Are we pro AI to the point where we've lost the sight of humanity? Are we neutral AI, knowing that the genie is out of the bottle, but we can put humans first and AI as complementary? And I think that is a fundamental question of ethics and integrity that boards and C-suites and senior leaders and line leaders, frankly, have to be asking themselves. What does AI stand for us in our leadership and our culture? So if it is just to, Glyne, and you know this, to improve EBITDA, to improve profitability, ergo by ensuring that anyone who is entry level no longer has an entry level, because those friction-based roles where you got to learn a lot, that fluid intelligence is where the tuition value mistakes occurred. You got to learn.
You learn by doing. You learn by doing, right?
So if you're a lawyer and an up and coming lawyer, and you were articling or used to article, and all those tough 16, 18, 20-hour days in the office in those first 3, 4, 5 years is suddenly now replaced, where does that learning come from?
Yeah.
And so industry by industry, I think what has to happen is, again, back to that book, is, well, what does your organization stand for? What's its purpose? With the genie out of the AI bottle, it's never going back. You and I both know that. It is, again, a question of ethics. Do you agree that it is humans first with complementary AI, or is it AI to replace humans? And ergo, then, what do you stand for as an organization? I think that, whether you're River Rock or Ruby, I think is going to be the fundamental question of the next 3 years.
Yeah, that's a huge one. That's a huge one. I think, and it's interesting, right? Because I think you're bang on. Like, what is it about? Is it to improve your EBITDA? Like, or is it to enable the humans in your organization, right? How are we even thinking about the use of this tool? Sort of Steph's had a question in the question section,
Oh, okay.
which I think could maybe like flip on this, because her question, and you touched on it, I think, when you talked about the BMW example, but says, what are some unique or innovative tactics an organization can deploy instead of job shadowing to have the Rubies mentor and share knowledge and wisdom? And I think this is probably potentially a bridging strategy for the Rivers who may not have exposure to the same things. Like, is there something around this that we need to be thinking about differently, in terms of getting people, the wisdom they need in a
So a couple examples. Deutsche Bahn, not Deutsche Bank. It's another German example I came across when I was in Germany. They're a cargo freight company.
Mm,
So they have trucks, they have trains. They're pretty big. They have 20,000 team members. They did an age audit,
mm.
and they realized, unbeknownst to them, that 55% of their workforce was 50 years and older. They're like, whoa, that is skewing the wrong way. So, good on them for doing essentially an age audit, which I encourage any organization to do. Withhold names if you have privacy issues, of course. But I think if you don't know your demographics, that's a problem. But so DB, Deutsche Bahn, they then instituted something or two things, which I thought was just brilliant. First, they did enter into kind of like what the mining industry is trying to do in Canada right now, a big hiring spree. Like, oh my gosh, we got to go hire some Rivers. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
But then they brought back something from like the 1960s and 70s. They brought back the apprenticeship model.
Mm,
And so there's something we can do.
mhm.
Why not apprentice? Why not have young Rivers, 18 to 30-year-olds, whatever, apprentice beside a Ruby or a Rock
Yeah.
for 6 months, 12 months? So that's you as an organization saying, we're going to invest in this individual. We believe that individual will be with us for X years, whatever the number is. We believe that is a good, sound investment. And even though we're not getting perhaps the earnout on that individual, we know we're protecting ourselves longer term through that apprenticeship.
Yeah.
That to me is just brilliant thing. And again, this could be blue collar, white collar. It doesn't matter. You can apply it wherever you go, in my opinion. So that's number one. Then what they did was they entered into organization wide, top to bottom to top mentoring. So different than the apprenticeship, because that's sort of like Yoda to Luke, right? The top to bottom to top was they instituted, which we talk about in HR a lot, not just mentoring program from sort of rocks to rivers or rubies to rocks and rivers, et cetera, but the other way, reverse mentoring. So that the older workers, the rubies in the rocks, right, were learning about new things that were coming up that they didn't really pay attention to because they've been doing their gig, their shtick for years. And so they taught young Rivers, right, how to do certain things differently with the technology, et cetera. But then they allowed, if you will, the Rivers to sort of teach the rest of the organization in a reverse mentor way. It's like, okay, this is fantastic.
Yeah,
So that's one example. If I go to Australia, Westpac, big bank, 35,000 people, like $1 trillion in investments, they did an age audit as well. And so Westpac says, oh my gosh, we have, they had 28% of their organization over the age of 50. So still pretty significant. And then they started thinking, okay, so let's start collaborating and figure out, well, what are some of the things we should do given now we know kind of the age of our organization? So one of the things they did, interestingly, is that they did an ergonomic assessment. And so they realized that some of their bank tellers were in situations that actually was adding to some of the physical stress and fatigue in certain situations at the banks. And so they created, raised desks, chairs that raise, different footwear, different foot settings, like just things you'd think about on manufacturing lines, but maybe not in a bank. And again, they're being pro-age and saying, well, what are some other options we can do here? And so that type of thinking, honestly, Glenn, is the way in which I hope we get to, is like just more pro-age.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think that there is so many, those of us that are leading organizations, what we really have to look at, and you raised it earlier, I think it just bears repeating, is, what are the biases that we're living in? What are the beliefs that we have around how work needs to get done, what is possible? Because I think it's so broken. We're so in this post-industrial model, like 9 to 5 is such a construct, right? It's such a construct. working in office is such a construct. And yet we, as soon as, like what it took, about 18 months before companies started going post-COVID, like we're
Yeah.
taking the
Yeah.
office,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so much of that, like we have a number of clients and we see it across the spectrum. We see people who, are 2 years into dealing with employees who are really unhappy about that kind of thing because it's not very favorable to when you're a rock because you have little kids and you got this and now you've got to be physically in an office somewhere, to people that are like,
Yeah,
wherever you want, right?
you've could interrupt one second here. You've touched on something because I've spent a lot of time on rivers and rubies, but it's the rocks who I think I'm most worried about. And so rocks can be thought of as the sandwich generation in a workforce. Now, I know I don't like using generations, but bear with me. So a sandwich generation rock, who you just mentioned, may have to be dealing with a kid 2, 3, 5 at home, but also have potentially, aging parents.
Absolutely.
Now, they are that bracket of people in that rock era, again, whatever it is, 30 to 50, it doesn't really matter, but we'll call it that for the time being. Do you know that is the fastest rising level of anxiety and burnout in all of the different ages in our workforces? And so you ask yourself, why? Yeah. Two things. One is just what I mentioned, so kids and aging parents. But the thing that we don't talk about is the fact that organizations, whether it's with AI or whether it is because they're just trying to help EBITDA or what have you, when we don't hire young people and we fire older people, so we don't have enough rivers or we fire more of the rubies, who picks up the slack?
Oh, totally.
The rocks.
Totally.
So if we are to actually look at this again by these three eras and do an age assessment and audit and say, how can we help all three eras? There is work to do in all three.
Yeah, I mean, that is so reflective in the white paper that we produced, where the people that are in that rock era, like 45% of all of our respondents cited constant firefighting as the hard, like the thing that they were dealing with the most. But the thing that was the difference for the people that were kind of more probably the more formed rocks was the fact that they didn't have the people below them. They weren't confident that the people below them could do the work. So which puts that pressure on, right?
Totally.
The people who were lower down were just overwhelmed, right? Like not enough, no clarity on priorities and things like that. So I think these things all start to piece together. Okay, so if people were listening on the call, if you were to give them 3 things that they could just start doing that would move the needle in the right direction on the conversation today, what would you advise them to do?
Okay. Number one, I would, if you can, do an age audit, get your CFO, CHRO involved, and find a way in which to do that. Again, privacy or otherwise, get that done. I mean, it's eye-opening. A sidebar to this conversation is an insurance company in Toronto, has about 3,000 people. The CFO got the book and reached out to me and said, I just did an age audit and OMG, this is now a task force in our insurance company. I was like, well, that made me feel good, but now they've got work to do because they didn't realize the percentage of people they had over the age of 50, and now they do, and now they're worried. So age audit, number one. Number two, wisdom. We didn't talk enough about wisdom, but here's your action. And that is, regrettably, people do leave. And they might leave involuntarily or voluntarily. And whether you're a river rock or ruby, there is wisdom that's sitting there. Yeah. So whether it's a cognitive task analysis, sometimes called CTAs, whatever it is, and this is where AI can be very useful. I want you to think about how you're capturing knowledge. And you're like, didn't we talk about this in the 90s, Dan, with knowledge management? And like, we did, but we sucked at it then and we still do now. So why don't we capture knowledge by just giving people the tool, which is easily just a video camera, and getting them to riff into video cameras, right there on your laptop or your phone, and then using AI to transcribe and turn into e-learning nuggets or video nuggets or different ways in which you can use the AI to actually capture, not just capture, but to transcribe and to then turn into learning nuggets. Oh my gosh, like this is so easy. The tool has helped us to this point in a way that's more chatbot-y, but it can be more than that. And you can capture and then transfer the wisdom. So that's number two. And then number three, again, back to my my wish out of all of this is to set torch and fire to all the career ladder thinking, is to between the career eras and not think about generations and these three career eras, but also the career canvas. It's like, okay, what can you do to help the cause so that your team members feel and trust you, that they don't have to work full time, that there is other opportunities to grow, that they might take a time out, that they could go do this neat gig over here. Like this, that type of language and age inclusive kind of culture, if you can just rethink that and just start the process, I think that's going to be a heck of a better place for everyone downstream.
Oh, so true. And I think it just I think of the number of people we coach here at the round table who are really smart. A lot of them are on this call, they're
Yeah.
incredible people. And yet, like I think everybody, so many of the career conversations I've had over the years, it's sort of this very black and white. The job's not working for me anymore, therefore I have to leave, right? And there's what are but is it the entire job? Is it aspects of the job? You love the company, you love the culture, you invest a lot. What do we need to do to give you more options? And that's why I really loved, your, kind of the career canvas, because I think it opens up people's minds that I could be having different conversations, right? I could be having different conversations about where I'm at personally and what I need next in my career.
Let me give you one final practical personal
Yeah.
example. So I left my role as chief envisioner at TELUS in the end of 2018, and it is now 2026.
Yep.
The CEO, who's just about to retire in 6 weeks' time, Darren Entwistle, asked me to stick around, not on a full-time basis, but on a gig.
Hmm.
He said, when you're a CLO and you launch the TELUS MBA, which is an MBA specifically just for TELUS team members, and we
Hmm.
had gone through about 3 cohorts by that point, he said, do you mind continuing to lead that for us?
Hmm.
And I was like, I'd love to. So TELUS became sort of my first retainer client, if you will, when I went solo. And
Hmm.
still to this day, I am in charge of the TELUS MBA for TELUS. And
Right.
so that's one of my gigs. And I have like multiple different gigs that I get to do. I'm very privileged. But there's an example where a CEO said, enough of the kind of classic thinking. You don't have to work here full time. Can you just still run this TELUS MBA for us? And I've been privileged to do so ever since.
I love that example. I love it. Well, Dan, I can't believe it. Like we're top of the hour already.
Aw.
Where did that time go? So thank you so much, everybody. There are, pictures of Dan's books. Please reach out to Dan. I think this talk is an incredible talk. I know there's a number of you that are on this call right now in talent. And so have him come in and shake up your executive team with some thinking, right? So there's all the contact information for Dan. But always a pleasure. Always goes too fast when you and I talk, Dan. Thank you for being here with us and sort of sharing your wisdom today. Um, so
Line, you are a friend first, but I want everyone to know that I have, well before we became friends, looked up to you and just continue to learn for what you do. And between Gline, the roundtable, and everything you do, thank you for what you do for Canada and the clients you serve globally. It is an honor to know that you do what you do. But it is even better to know that behind that friendship is someone who's just so astutely articulate in this talent and space of culture. Thank you for that.
okay, I'll pay you later for that one. Thank you. All right. Well, listen, everybody, we're going to be back next month, and I have another of my favorite people, Rena Nickerson, who is an incredible purpose-driven leader. So join us for that conversation. It's going to be juicy. Her and I have gotten into it on the pre-calls that we've been having. So come and join us for that one. I want to flag those of you who are alumni on today's webinar and our HR partners. Start to keep your eyes open. We are launching the survey for our 2027 Roundtable report in June. So be sure to fill that out for us. We are very unique because we focus on hypos. So we really, really, really rely on your feedback to start to shape the thinking in organizations around that. And then on that note, fall session, we've got advanced registration that'll start happening soon. If you're interested in learning about the Roundtable for Leaders open enrollment program, we don't run it very often. We run it twice a year, but reach out to Colleen Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Stay in touch. Reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want, and have a great weekend. I know it's only Thursday, but it's coming. It's coming. Have a good long weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.